Brandon, thanks so much for joining us on the Freedom Club podcast. And we live stream this in my Freedom Club community Facebook group, which has about 750 people. So thank you for joining us.
Of course, pleasure to be here. And I'm a big follower of yours. I love your content. So it was instinctive for me to ask you to say, hey, let's connect.
Yeah, no, likewise. And you sent me a copy of the book, which we're going to talk about. And offline, I was, my family is from Brooklyn and Queens. You're from Brooklyn. I was actually born in Manhattan. We lived in New Jersey at the time, but we moved away when I was about 1 year old. So I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. But offline, I mentioned in the late 90s, I was on a sports memorabilia kick. And so I've known about Steiner Sports for a long time, as have many. And for those of you listening and aren't aware, Steiner Sports and Brandon Steiner, giants, not just in the memorabilia world, but the sports marketing world. And so I really, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We're working on it. We're still a work in progress over here.
Well, and that's, the work in progress is what your latest book, Living on Purpose, is all about. And for those who listen to this podcast, big part of what we talk about is purpose. It's the Freedom Club podcast. It's about finding that sense of freedom in your life, maybe redefining what success means. And you talk about that a lot in your book. But before we get there and your journey, I'd love to ask you the word freedom. What does that mean to you?
That's simple. Freedom and success, by the way. I think success is success. The question is, are you going to settle for success? That's my big issue with the book, by the way. It's not about whether you want to be successful or not, because we're all successful. Just by getting on this planet, by getting born, we're successful. And most of us don't give ourselves enough credit for the success we have. The question is, are you going to settle for it? And I never wanted to be successful. I never had any intention of being successful. Never want to be successful. I always wanted to be significant. And I always wanted to be extraordinary. I always wanted to be the best I ever was in whatever I decided I was going to do. And that's just the difference. I don't look down on people that are just successful or just good or just great. I have a lot of respect for them. They're okay in that position. I'm just not. Freedom is everything, and it's what you work for. Most people think they're really working for to make a lot of money so they can have a lot of things, but really what you really work for when you have a lot of money is really freedom. It's really the ability to make choices. It's the ability to decide what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, if you're going to do it, and who you're going to do it with. And freedom also is deciding what kind of hotel room you want to get. If you want to get the really nice room with the king bed and the view, you can get that too. Put that onto the freedom. But, all kidding aside, I think freedom is, a lot of people don't really think a lot about the ultimate, what the ultimate level of success is. And, from a financial standpoint, it really is about, basically saying, I don't want to work today. I don't see myself doing business with you. I want to do more business with you, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that, and I'm going to focus on that. I think choices, when you have success in school, you get to decide what the next school you're going to get to go to is. That's the freedom you get, the freedom of choosing what college you want to go to as opposed to accepting whatever college will take you. So I think, I think people get a little bit confused about financial freedom, and it really does give you the flexibility and the ability to choose.
It's interesting, and you have one of the headers, not a chapter, but your chapters are broken down into different sections. Is on the way to riches, I bankrupted myself, and when you talk about success and significance, there are people out there. I was one of them who I've met people with who make $30,000 a year who I would consider wealthy. I've met people who have $1 million in the bank who I consider poor. And so can you tell us a little bit for everyone listening, what does that mean? On the way to riches, you bankrupted yourself. You were doing well, successful, yet you felt like you were bankrupting yourself. How so?
Well, first of all, I grew up extremely poor. And I define poor, is really not having the necessity things that a child would normally have, like food, clothing. We had a safe environment, but it was rough. But one thing I just want to clear up is that, my wealth or my poverty was not me as a person. I mean, I've always been a wealthy person. My circumstances may have sucked or been poor. So, my circumstances, what I've come to realize is just because you have a lot of money, your circumstances happen to be wealthy. Doesn't mean that you're wealthy. And I think that people get confused about the value of money. I think everybody overrates money and wealth. I think people put too much credit and credence in it when they should be not thinking about what you do for a living, but what kind of person you are. It should be much more of a focus, and more of a focus on the people that really help make this world go round. Teachers, firemen, policemen, people that are fighting the battles across seas to keep us safe. Those are people that really deserve the statues, and those are people that are extremely wealthy because you just got to admire what they do. But so remember, whether you're rich or poor, I mean, it's your circumstances are rich, your circumstances are poor. And my circumstances have been a lot of different things. But on my way to, I was just so focused, because when you grow up that poor and you're hungry and you never want to be hungry again or not have heat again and some of the bare necessities again, it's enough to drive somebody crazy. It did drive me crazy, to the point where I was so driven, where I wanted to make a lot of money and never have to worry about money again. And I accomplished that. But then I realized, on the way to the bank, that even though I was depositing some pretty big checks, that there was some bankruptcy going on with my spiritual process, my health, my connection to family and friends. It just didn't feel good. It didn't feel right. I thought the money was going to conquer all, and it really kind of was a little disappointed. I'm not completely, because I like the money grab. I mean, I still did. I like making money. Yeah. I didn't feel the need to stop making money. I needed the need to go and respect some other pillars, respect some other aspects of my life. So I just wasn't, a small-minded money grabber, which is kind of where I was headed. And I like the money grab. I respect people that make a lot of money. I think making money, there's an art to it, and it's fun. It's a fun game to play. But a lot of it is what you do with the money and how you can put the money to use and ultimately help others. And the real, helping others is not a burden. It's really an opportunity. It's an opportunity that will bring you sheer joy. So for me, I've learned that to use the money grab, which I enjoy doing. I like that game. Mm-hmm. I like playing basketball. I like playing the money grab business game. So I'm not going to stop playing it. I'm not going to feel guilty about making more money, but I've learned how I could take that money and convert it into something that feels a lot better. And I've also learned that there's other things that come sometimes and often ahead of the money grab, that the money grab is just going to have to take a back seat because my wife wants to do something, or I'm going to go travel, do something with my kids, even though it's going to cost me a lot of money not being in the office for that particular week.
Sure.
And every now and then I do pull out a trump card and says, no, I like this little money grab opportunity I've created for myself. So all of you need to step aside because you're not a priority right now. I want to go for this. But generally, that's not the case at this point. And that's kind of how I was feeling probably about 15 years ago. It's a weird thing because you work your whole life to have some success, have significance. I wanted to be the best that there was. And then kind of I was headed there and then didn't feel that good. It was a really tough period of time. And then I started documenting it, which is where, remember, the book isn't me telling you what to do. So I hate that. Nobody wants to be told what to do and getting all uppity about it all. I just showed you what I did and some of the problems that some of my success and significance led to and what I did about it.
It's interesting as you talk about this. My dad grew up during the Great Depression. His father came from Italy with didn't speak English, and I grew up with that mentality. And it helped me in many ways, but it also, when I started my business, I took anyone who offered me money, man, I took it. And I had clients who didn't value me or didn't pay me enough. And like you, it was a weird time because I realized, listen, I'm making all this money. I'm unhappy. I felt guilty for not being happy. Like, why do I have to feel guilty about? But it's interesting because I shut down my agency. I made less money, but I felt wealthier because I love making money. I'm a capitalist. I'm a free market guy, but I look at money differently than I used to. I look at it how I can purchase fulfillment. We put off travel for 17 years because we never had enough to do it. last year, total change in mindset, 5.5 weeks in Europe. We're doing 3 weeks in Europe now. So do you find that before you had your kind of awakening that you say you love making money, but that you look at it differently now than you used to?
I mean, I had a moment of clarity. Not really. I mean, I think when you grow up with the way I grew up, I mean, I think unfortunately or fortunately, money is always going to be money, and a dollar is a dollar. And when it's not, I'm not going to go to work because, you know, the power and the value of money is so important, because if you're not transcending that as somebody who's running a company, particularly for your clients, then it's, yeah, you know, then you're playing a game that's not, you're not really authentically in the game. I mean, right. The name of the game is making money, being authentic about it, helping others so they can make money. So, you know, I look at money as money, you know, and I'm just not, you know, it's not my purpose, you know, as far as, you know, hopefully I can have a big day today so that I can get, I change my purpose. You know, so when I look at making a lot of money today, where maybe I was thinking maybe I could buy a car or this or that, I really don't have those needs. You know, I didn't put off travel. My wife's been on me. We've been traveling a good amount of our marriage, probably more in the last 10 or so years than ever before. But we traveled a good amount. We have had a nice place to live. I look at the people I can help. Like I love, to me, where it motivates me is all the charities and all the people I can help. And I committed myself, and this is kind of a little bit what you're saying, but and the repurpose for me was I'm never going to work a full day. Now, a full day for me is probably more than what most people do, but I'm never going to work a full day just on the money grab. It's just not going to happen. There's always going to be a percentage of my day that's going to be to help others, whether it's mentoring someone, sending out a check. There's always going to be several acts of kindness every day to try to help somebody else with their life, moving them along, whether it be for their money grab or a problem they're having that I can help them with. So my goal is, like, I don't want to wake up one day and just spend my entire life just worrying about making money. Like the money grab, like the game of money, but I'm also like the idea that I have 2 homes that my wife and I oversee. I have a youth scholarship at Syracuse. You know, I'm helping kids in different sports teams. I'm building a new, this is the stuff I'm in the middle of now. I'm building a new basketball court in the Bronx for kids. It's going to be a state-of-the-art, unbelievable, with Nancy Lieberman. I'm redoing a police precinct that's in Precinct 46, right in the middle of the hardest part of the Bronx. I'm redoing their family community room and their break room to be like a Mac Daddy cool place, because nobody puts any money into police stations, fire stations. And I don't even get you started about public schools. Like, people want to know, why don't our kids go to public schools? Because they're shitholes. Because nobody puts money in. All these developers come in and they build buildings and they do all this stuff, but they don't plant a tree. They don't build a new school or upgrade a school that's locally. Almost none of them do. But, you know, listen, all I can do is what I'm doing. Yeah. You know, I'm doing, you know, I'm redoing, you know, last year my wife and I did a library in Mount Vernon, which is, you know, kind of a tough area. So I'm spending not all my day. I'm not a full philanthropist where I'm just constant, but there's a part of every one of my day that I'm going to do something good. And, you know, I'm not going to broadcast about it. Even 90% of it I'm just doing because it's just sheer joy. And people that know me know that I'm all over the place with it, the same way I'm all over the place making money.
It's interesting, you know, you're at this point where you can do all those great things, obviously, from monetary success that you and the company have had. And maybe it's just me being old too, because, like, when I think of the late 90s, I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem that long ago. But really, in the life cycle of where you started and where you've come, you know, thinking, like, I think of Steiner Sports, I think of the, you know, the billboard in Yankee Stadium. I think, you know, seeing it all over, you know, sports memorabilia. You go on probably eBay, you know, Steiner Sports, the certificates of authenticity. But then reading the book, it really wasn't that long ago. It's so interesting reading about you in your car picking up these athletes and driving them around, and you kind of doing that slump work. I mean, it was not that long ago that you were doing that. The 90s, right? I
mean, I'm still the same guy I always was. I mean, you know, I'm not in the warehouse as often as I used to be, and certainly not in some of the nitty gritty, but I'm here every day and trying to figure it out. And I love, you know, the stuff we do makes a lot of customers happy. It can be a game changer for kids, and even if those kids are in 50-something-year-old man's bodies. But I'm having fun. I mean, I'm still having fun creating a lot of different things. I'm grateful that it's our 30th year. And it's not always easy to stay in business for 30 years and be relevant and people like what you're doing, even though you may like what you're doing. So you never can take that for granted. And gratitude is always on the forefront of what I'm thinking. But, and listen, I have had some success, so I can accelerate the doing good more, yes. But I always felt like I did, I've always found a little time to do some good. I just wasn't as happy with the amount of good I was doing, and I've been able to accelerate it. But even when I was just making things work, I was still doing fundraising and doing stuff because I've always enjoyed that. When I had a moment of clarity, I was like, why aren't I doing that more? Like, why? I mean, think about the power or some of the connections and the relationships I have with all these different athletes and teams and sports that seem to move people. They move people a lot more than I'm going to move people. So why not team up with those people to do even more good, show them how to do some good, have them help me do some good. And that's worked out for me. I feel better about myself in general. But, listen, it's always confusing when you're climbing the ladder. I tell people it's not easy. I mean, especially when you're trying to climb the ladder for extraordinary or significance, let alone success. Trying to get your family good and everything else. But when you're climbing the ladder, just make sure, first of all, the ground underneath that ladder is firm, solid, and make sure it's leaning against the right building. You don't want to get up to the top of that ladder and find only out that wasn't even, getting to that top of that ladder was not even what you wanted. So, and they always say, the biggest thing about success is not getting what you want, but wanting what you get after you get it. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. You got to constantly evaluate. And that's where I look at my life very similar to a sports team. Like, it's, the button that's most often not used on your remote. You know what that button is?
Mm-mm.
It's the pause button, man.
Yeah.
The pause button. I would not tell anybody out there listening and watching to stop. Maybe slow down, but hit the pause button once in a while, just like every other team. I mean, you look at a basketball game last night. Duke came back. Game was so fast, but it's the timeout. I'm not coaching a bunch of losers. Something that gets said. And I recommend that to everyone. It's like, listen, there's a lot of stuff going on in your life. Life's moving quickly. Wife, husband, kids, work, family, friends, sports, all kinds of stuff. But hit that damn pause button, evaluate, step outside yourself, see yourself, just like any sports team would. They'll take a timeout. And at halftime, get in the locker room and be honest. Like, talk about some of the things you like and don't like. You did it. You said, I don't like this company that I started. It was halftime. You're in the locker room. You come up with a different game plan. Because the best teams aren't always necessarily the best teams, but they're the ones that adjust. They're the ones that hit the pause button and make the adjustments given the situation that they're in. And I think that I'd love to see people, and that's kind of really core of the book. I just love to see people do that more. Hit the pause button. The pause button is only one over from the play button. So when you're ready to go, you hit that play button, you're right back on track. But taking a few minutes to think about some stuff that's really not working. I always say, don't be SOS. Don't be stuck on stupid. And a lot of people get stuck on stupid. They're in relationships that are just never going to work. They've tried, or they're at jobs where they're just miserable, or they haven't done all the things they want to do with their kids as they're rapidly growing up. I don't know what you're waiting for. Those kids aren't going to get young again. They're waiting for the end of the quarter to go have a catch with their kid or take their wife out on this nice little vacation. I mean, it's just not good thinking. It's SOS. It's stuck on stupid because it's not going to happen until you make it happen, and until you take a pause and realize what it's going to take to make it happen. You need that little time to realize where you're kind of coming up short. Or, same vein, look at what you're doing really well and hit that button. That's when you hit the fast forward button. Keep going. Go. You found something, you're rolling, get right back into it. I mean, I think that sometimes we take for granted sometimes when we're on the right track and we are doing good and things are going well. Man, stay there. Enjoy it.
It's interesting because I think, and I was guilty of this for a long time, the sunk cost theory. Like you go to a movie and it's the worst movie you've ever, but we're here and we already paid $5. So let's invest another $2. And I think people do that. Well, my job sucks, but I've put 5 years into it. So why don't I do another 5? And they keep investing. And I'll have, when you talk about riches and bankrupting yourself, I have a lot of guys who come to me, some with who are making good money. but they're going to lose their wives. Their relationship with their kids suck. And I said, okay, well, what's holding you back from making a change? And they say, $300,000 a year, because that's what I'm making now. I said, okay, so that's the bounty. That's how much you want for your wife and kids. Well, no, that's not fair. I said, well, you're making it now and you're miserable. Why wouldn't you make a change? But they just keep investing in it. And I don't know if you know Dr. Natalia Vikovsky. She's on LinkedIn. She does branding. And I had her on a few weeks ago, and she said exactly that. Everyone thought she was successful. You're so successful. You're doing all this stuff. She was going to the doctor with anxiety attacks, and she hit the pause button, went on a sabbatical, completely changed everything around, and is having a brilliant, successful, fulfilling second career.
Well, I think when you put first and foremost your needs and you bypass your wants and dreams, your hopes and dreams, it always has to be front and center. And a lot of people get caught up with their needs. They start creating a lifestyle, and then all of a sudden they're basically living their life to support those needs as opposed to living a lifestyle to support their hopes and dreams. Hopes and dreams should always be front and center. And, I talk about it on my blog on brandonsteiner.com. I wrote this blog a couple weeks ago, which was, you don't want to be caught in a stripper box. I said my grandfather was a stripper. And, I said, well, it wasn't quite a stripper. But what is happening is, when you think about a stripper, and it doesn't have to be a female or male stripper. It's not really like that. But what happens is, when you think about the stripper, they come out, they're not sure what they want to do. So they become a stripper. Male, female, it doesn't matter. You start making a boatload of money, actually a shitload of money. And before you know it, you're making a couple $100,000 a year stripping. And all of a sudden now you got a house, you got a family, you got a whole bunch of things that are now based on you making that kind of money. You pick your head up, you don't want to strip anymore. And all of a sudden you realize you got to take a step back, not do anything for a year to learn something else. But you can't do that because you're caught up in payments, cars, this, that, and everything else. And before you know it, you end up stripping for 40 years because you can't break away from it. Now, a lot of people are caught in the stripper box. They're stuck doing the same thing because they're supporting those needs and the lifestyle they created instead of trying to support their hopes and dreams. And sometimes that does come with compromise. Sometimes that comes with sacrifice. Sometimes that is a much bigger picture that they may not allow you to go on those vacations. But if you're following your hopes and dreams and something much bigger than you ever imagined, that's what you're chasing, you can sacrifice a couple of vacations or maybe not driving in a nice car or even having a car at all. But when you start compromising and sacrificing your hopes and dreams for your needs, you're going to end up in the stripper box. And it's not a good place to be. And it's not something you want to get caught up in. But there's so many people that they pick up their heads, they have no growth. There's nowhere for them to go. And going back to what you were saying earlier, and my philosophy is, happy is a very weird and overused word that I don't know if people really understand. But to me, happiness is growth, progress, challenge, working with people that you love, loving the people you're working with, really enjoying what you're doing, and you can't wait to do more of it. Having no shot clock in your office. You don't even know what time it is. You don't really care. There is no beginning. There is no end. Like, that's happiness. I mean, and by the way, with a lot of that happiness comes pain and all kinds of other stuff because you're chasing something that can be frustrating. It can put you on the side of the road. But I don't know, that's for me. I mean, some of my happiest moments, I've been in some really dark places that I'm not really happy and comfortable even, I'm not proud of, because it's, to create and do some of the things I've done, which nobody else agreed with or saw, wasn't easy. But I was happy. I was pretty consumed about it, and I was progressing. I was going after something that I hoped and dreamt for. And it's nothing better than when it actually happens.
How long, when you talk about hopes and dreams, I mean, being in sports marketing, for sports nuts like me, you talked about, grown kids, right? They're in their 40s and 50s and they're kids. How long was it a dream for you to do what you're doing? Sports marketing, sports memorabilia?
It wasn't. It really was really fluke, frankly. I mean, I was an entrepreneur, a serial one. And I was dreaming and scheming and hustling, and I baked and I cooked and I ran restaurants. I worked in the hotel business. I love that business, and I did well in that business. It was a great business for me. The reason why I opted out of that, I was worried about the lifestyle, and I wanted something more than that, which was I wanted to see what it'd be like to have a normal family, and I knew that business would take me out of weekends and nights and excessive hours without flexibility. And it scared me, because I wanted to have a family that I was kind of had a little more, control of, having us stay together. And I thought that was dangerous for me because I get pretty consumed, and I could see myself not going home for 3 months because, we were going through a busy spell at my restaurant. So I always felt like I was going to have companies that I was going to run. But the sports thing just kind of ran into, really. I got in the sports bar business because I had worked at the Hard Rock, and I thought the Hard Rock would be a great theme, but in sports. So it was just a fluke getting into that. And then, sure enough, it's like one of the first sports bars in the country, the one we had created downtown Manhattan with athletes and all kinds of sports people coming in. There really wasn't much of a sports business back in the early 80s. And I just met a lot of sports people, and frankly, I saw that a lot of people were asking me, do I know how to get a hold of this guy and that guy? And so I started off I had a little sports business where I did the fan mail for players, and I was just setting up some charity stuff. I really had no freaking idea what, getting in that sports marketing business was going to be, or whether I'd have a goal to want to be in it. I was a big sports fan, yes. Love sports, yes. A high-level mediocre athlete, yes. Never like, I almost played, I hurt my arm. At best, I was probably like one of the last guys chosen in for most of the teams that I played in my neighborhood, even though Brooklyn was pretty competitive. But I gave it my all. I love the competition. So, it just comes about. But live with a college football player. I mean, who knows that experience was going to turn into something really beneficial for me, to live with a Division I football player and to live with a black player. Back in the 70s, like that wasn't common. When I went home and told my mom my roommate was black, she was like, but not that she was prejudiced, just wasn't a common thing. But learning how, listen, there's a lot to learn about, different cultures. There's a difference between knowing some black people and living with black people and really understand, some of the differences. You learn a lot about baby powder and oil and cream and, is their skin dry, just little things like that. You learn about a pick.
Yes.
It's the pick. Flow or, that kind of thing. And then eating, and there's a lot of stuff. It was great. But, you don't realize you're going to be doing business with a lot of multicultural athletes, and it's nice to have a feel. So all that stuff kind of comes together. I tell people all the time, like all the grains of sand is what equals the beach, and it's so important to pay attention to whatever you're doing. Even if you don't think it's the end all, it's somehow a lot of times just comes around and can be the help that ends up making what you end up doing so much even better because of the experience you had previously. And that's how it's been for me.
When you talk about, so you were an entrepreneur, you're huffing it, you start this company. And one of the favorite stories in the book was the Ottis Anderson story. And you're running around in your car, picking up these major athletes. I mean, he was the Super Bowl MVP. You're running around with him. And tell us about the story about the airplane. I love it.
Well, first of all, it starts with the humility. I mean, everybody looks at all the athletes and partnerships, but many, many days I was outside locker rooms, and that Giant Stadium was out in the parking lot, snowing, freezing. You're just waiting for the players to come out because you didn't have their home phone number. You couldn't get a hold of them. The agents were different back then. There weren't a lot of agents even worrying about these players. So you need to get home numbers and make sure that these players knew who you were. So I'd always wait for Ottis outside. And Ottis was a rookie of the year from St. Louis, got traded to the Giants, didn't even play for a couple of years. And all of a sudden he got hot, come Super Bowl 25, ended up being the MVP. And sure enough, I won that opportunity to market him and represent him, and that's what we were doing. And in those days I was running around, driving the players, paying the players, and trying to –
You didn't have any employees?
I had one.
One, that was it.
I had one employee. Well, maybe that was a share. We shared the employee. She answered the phone for 3 companies in the office. I was just kind of doing it all. And so I booked Ottis for a speech in Virginia. And it was kind of a last-minute thing. I was just hustling, trying to find as much work. He was the MVP, and we were just trying to literally just do the money grab and find companies. And so we go to Newark. We get on the plane. Well, at least we started to get on the plane, and Ottis then looks at his ticket and says, "Where are we sitting?" I said, "Look, I grabbed the first ticket I can." And he goes, "No, we're in the back of the plane. I'm not getting on this plane." I go, "Ottis, please. I mean, it's a 45-minute flight to D.C. from Newark." He's like, "No, I'm the Super Bowl MVP, professional football player. I'm not a small guy. I'm not sitting in coach." So meanwhile, Ottis grabs the microphone on the plane and starts actually asking the entire plane, no one in New Jersey, a lot of Giant fans, do you think that I should be sitting in coach? Here's my man, Brandon Steiner represents me. And so, people are like, no. And he literally gets off the plane. I had to get off the plane and beg him to get back on the plane. And then finally, they're about to close the door, and he finally gets back on the plane. And when we get off the plane, he says, listen, I know you think that I was busting your chops, but I was really just trying to teach you that if you're going to go get in the athlete procurement business and book athletes and want us to respect you, you have to treat us right. It's not that sitting in coach is this or that, but, when you're 6'4" with 34-inch thighs, like, we need to be sitting in first class. Like, and you got to be thinking along those lines about first class travel, and how you treat us will determine of how we're going to work with you and how much we're going to do with you and whether we say yes or no. And the faster you start taking care of athletes, not only me, but all the athletes, that's how you're going to grow your business. And he gave me a couple other good tips, and he had my attention. And so sometimes even when you're getting, your butt beat in, sometimes there's a good learning lesson there to be had, and you wonder why you're getting your butt beat in. And I think it's just so important that you really get in the learning mindset. People always talk about losing, and it's just important that you take your setbacks and take them as seriously as the things that you do to move ahead. But I was always a very coachable, teachable guy, and I still am. And I'm still learning. Like, I think there's so many things to learn if you want to be extraordinary in your business. And I thought that was a great, really fundamental foundation thing, not realizing, because I hadn't been working with professional athletes that long, hey, Brandon, pay the athletes up front and sit them up front. He's like, where's my check for this thing? Well, I'm going to give it to you. Pay the athletes up front and sit us up front and treat us like celebrities, because you're actually selling us as celebrities, so don't treat us like something else. It was a fundamental lesson, but I'm grateful for it. It was a good lesson to learn.
It's interesting, and in this day and age of cost cutting and online shopping and everything, the companies that invest in the experiences, because that's whether you sit in the back of the plane or the front of the plane, that's an experience, and it's a feeling. And you have companies like Zappos. They sell shoes, right? And if you just left it at that, what differentiates them from any other shoe company? But my wife loves them because she can get them, try them on, send them back and forth. And, I've put on some retreats, and I'm doing some retreats, and it's always at the beginning when I first started doing them, I focused on, well, what am I going to teach people when I'm there? And people are like, no. What experience are you going to give them when they're there? Because, and I have a sales coach who said, when he has retreats, the biggest thing is not when they're in the room and you're lecturing to them. It's afterward when they're smoking a cigar or having a pizza around the fire. That's the times that they're going to remember. Which that reading that lesson in the book is really stuck with me.
Well, thank you. It was stuck with me the hard way, but yeah. At that time, Ottis was like my only client. It was my Jerry Maguire moment. Yeah, it wasn't like I had any other clients. It was Ottis, and I was in an office share, and I didn't have a lot going. It was a very really, really tough time. Really trying to get my business to progress, because I've been in business about 4 years at that point. And, wife was kind of pressing me to maybe, go get a real job and give up on it. I'm fighting the fight to keep it going. And Ottis was like my first big get, and he was my only get. Wow. So here I am, like in my Jerry Maguire moment, help me, help you, help me, help you. I'm like, I'm like, I got nothing else. This is it. I just got Ottis. And he's like not getting on the goddamn plane, which was, $1,000 commission. Frank, I'm like, I had to make this $1,000.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole bunch of things. I just wasn't thinking big picture, long term. I was like, well, we could save $100 on the first class ticket. He's not going to care. I was just thinking small.
The, kind of along those lines of playing not to lose your $1,000 commission or an extra $100 out of it. Another piece you talk about, and I think you get, with this, give the example, I think Syracuse, or it might've been the women's team, but about not playing scared. And, when you're so tightened up, there's a book, Sean Acor, who has a book called The Happiness Advantage, talks about, if you're stuck, get up and go for a walk. Go do something that makes you happy, come back. And I always compare it to, it was like Christmas Vacation, when he takes out the big ball of Christmas lights. And, everyone knows that no matter how much you organize it, if you pull on it longer, you're not going to be able to do it if you let it some slack. And as I read that chapter, I got, so many people play scared or not to lose, and they lose more.
You can't play scared. And most people play, life scared, oh, well, what's going to happen? But at the end of the day, I think I got the most valuable lesson from probably Derek Jeter and maybe Mariano, who just said there's no such thing as a big game. And there's a big meeting today, big interview, big sale. Once you start thinking like that, what are you saying about everything else?
Interesting.
Expecting your other 364 days. Big day. How about the other 364? And I think the people that really understand are on the road to success are the ones that are consistent and treat every day like a big day. And I remember I was at spring training and I was sitting in the stands and Mariano called me on my cell. And he finished what he was doing early and he was going to come talk with me about some work we were going to do. And he came up in the stands and sat with me. And which was kind of unbelievable. I'm sitting with Mariano in the stands in Tampa. And I said to him, how do you do it? How do you do it? I mean, you just pitched and he goes, Brandon, you saw me pitch one inning early in this game. And I pitched that first inning just like I was in the World Series Game 7. Every time I walk on the mound, it's Game 7, everything on the line. And I don't deviate. So there is no such thing as a big game. Because so I walk on the mound Game 7, there's no mindset change for me. I look at everything as a big game. And it was a great lesson I learned because I feel that way too. Like when I'm making a sale, if it's $1 million sale, $10 sale, I treat it the same. I'm as committed and convicted in just helping you cross the street as I am and giving you a $10 million sponsorship. And people knock me on that. It's like, don't just worry about the big stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff. I see books like that. I'm like, oh, God. I mean, I sweat the small stuff. And I do. I decided I'm not going to change. I'm going to sweat the small stuff. I think the fortune's in the follow-up. I think that the fortune is in the little stuff and in the detail. And I really think you got to not be in the mindset. And I knew when we were watching that game, you're talking about the Syracuse Duke game.
Yeah.
Years ago, I knew that the kids, when they were in practice and warming up earlier in that day, I was there, and they started taking pictures, and you could see that they were kind of in their mind. It was big for them. And once you're in that mindset, you're toast. You got to get on that court like it's the same high school court, little league court. You go into a big meeting. You got to approach that meeting the same way as if you were just going to sell a couple packs of bubble gum. And I do it. I do. I go into some of the biggest meetings. I see people that are preparing spreadsheets, PowerPoints. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Going in there, I'm going to listen and find out what somebody is doing and what they need. And I'm going to try to think about what I could do to help them, or I'm going to listen and then say I'm going to come back to them. I'm going to come in with some fancy deck, which bores the shit out of them. Which is, I can't believe people coming with these decks and everything. I'm like, you don't even know my middle name. You don't even know if I have a dog or not. You think I'm just going to give you $1 million right now? And that's my thing. Like, there is no such thing as a big game. And I think that's what Coach Bayham said in the huddle. Like, you can't play this game scared. And I think they had scored like 18 points in the first half, which is not a lot of points. And he was just repeating, you can't play this game scared. And what happens, you go into some of these arenas or some of these big meetings, and you just get yourself all amped up and hyped up over what? So.
Yeah. You should have a talk with Brian. I'm a Notre Dame fan. You should have a talk with Brian Kelly. He has a penchant for playing scared in the big games.
Yeah, he's got some other issues too. And I like Brian Kelly. I love Notre Dame, and he is a winner. He does know how to win. But there is an art to winning the big one.
Yeah.
There is an art to getting to the next level, and that is consistency and not differentiating between that championship playoff game and then you playing some team that you know you're going to beat by 40. Right. You have to keep it the same so that there's faith. There's like a little thing I keep on my desk. Because that's the problem is that most coaches, most people think it's in the numbers, but it's about this. It's about faith. And it just is. It's like that's the ingredient, the secret potion, is that you have to have faith in your strategy. and faith in your ability, so that as you're going through the same routines of your strategy and going over your ability and how it plays into that strategy, you've got to have faith. And when you start changing up the temperature and changing the voice tones and changing all the communication, when it starts intensifying, you people are going to respond that way. And that's why some coaches never win the big ones, because the game should have never been a big game to begin with. I think Belichick plays every game the same way, that same level of preparation. I think that's the secret to the sauce, this confidence that no matter what game, what part of the year, he's putting in a certain kind of effort to give them a chance to win. And when you have that faith and confidence, that's what you want to have in your business and your boss and your family, that consistency.
When you talk about the small stuff, one thing that I have begun, it's a challenge for me, but I know others. It's a fine line, and some of it is small stuff. There's some meetings that I'd be like, I don't want to take this meeting. I don't see where it's going to help me. And then I take the meeting, and it's like, oh my gosh, had I not taken this meeting, I would have missed out on a great opportunity. But there are also, as I grow and as my company grows, and you write about this in the book, there is an ever increasing desire for everyone to want a piece of your time, and protecting that time, protecting your energy. How do you differentiate between, and for me, sometimes I make the wrong choices. How do you differentiate? There's a lot of people competing for your time. The people that you want to be friendly, you want to be a giver, you want to do all that, but you also want to protect your time. How do you differentiate between those? It's kind of a fine line sometimes.
Well, your biggest asset is your time and your relationship with time, and you don't want to be the kind of person that nobody can get to. But I think the most important thing always has to be the most important thing. And you got to know who's important and what's important. You got to do the most important thing for the most important people. And it's just, that concept always trumps everything. And it kind of help you with your answer. If you know what's important, who's important, and what's important, you're doing what's important for who's important. It's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go do this pod interview right now because my wife needs to take her to the doctor. My wife's important, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this another time. Now, what I do is I always, every morning I go back and look at my calendar, and I see what people have tried to talk me into, or my assistants what they've wrote me into, and see if they've been respectful of my time to make sure things are coordinated right. But I also go back on decisions I made, so I don't make the same mistake twice and say, that was a waste of time. I should have done that. Should have done this. Should have done that. I'm always looking at my calendar. My calendar is a surprise to me, and I think a lot of people don't manage their calendar tightly enough so they can coordinate things smarter. So they have extra time, and they and the other thing is I used to take the train or drive into the city, and what I'll do is I'll combine meetings when I'm driving somewhere so that I can actually work in the car. So I'm right in traffic, or even if I'm going to the airport, I'm expecting that hour and a half delay. Now you get a little crazy in the airport. I understand it, me too. But you still got an hour and a half in the airport, but you got to get there an hour early. Sometimes you get there even earlier. What are you doing in that hour and a half? Maybe there's some work to be done, some phone calls to be made. So, you got to look at all your time as valuable, and you got to recognize all decisions you make and be critical, be able to step outside yourself and go, Brandon, I was not too smart. And then, there are times when you just commit to just saying, look, this is going to be a waste of time, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to the NBA All-Star game this weekend. My wife, let's go to the NBA All-Star game. And I've been to a million of those, so I don't really go to all those things as much. But my wife wants to go. And I know this is going to be it's going to be a problem for me, because I'm going to be with my wife, and I'm going to be running into all kinds of people, and she's going to get pissed because, running into all kinds of people and not really paying that much attention. And she's not a big sports fan to begin with. But so what I've purposely done, knowing my time, is I've made sure not to tell anybody I'm going, because I'm not really going down there for business. I made it a point not to talk and speculate that I'm going to be down there, so I don't run into all kinds of, whether it be athletes or agents or vendors. So I set myself up at least a little bit to win. And the other thing I do also is I give myself a few hours to screw up. I think you said you made a couple mistakes here, and I think if you're not making a few mistakes every week with your time, you're probably not playing on a high enough level. So, it's cool. You make a few mistakes. That's okay. But, at the end, I give myself a few hours. I know there's some kids that want to talk to me about something that I know is going to be completely meaningless to me, but my time to them will be important. So I give it. So I have X amount of time that I'm giving up because I'm Brandon Steiner. I run a company, and there are people that want a little piece of it. And I'm going to give that. I look at that as, pro bono time. But I'm not willing to do that every day, all day, because I do have a responsibility to my family. And that's what gives me the ability to say no. And I have a responsibility to my 75 employees here.
Last question. And thank you, by the way,
By the way, capacity is a state of mind. So
yeah, you write about that in the book too.
Yeah, if you're feeling that you're too busy, then you may want to take a walk around the block, because that's bullshit.
I find a lot of people use the word busy as a badge of honor. They'll announce it on Facebook. Don't even try calling me this week. I'm so busy. It's clear they want a medal or a cookie. You mentioned Mariano. You and he are very close. You write about that in the book, but also in your videos. But he played a key part and a key role in your faith. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We were just talking about it yesterday. Actually, we were doing something down at the stock exchange, and we were just talking about how I had no faith. I didn't even understand what faith was until I met Mariano. Which at that time, he was a skinny little kid from Panama, and I just had gone, I was desperate. I needed to get some World Series balls, and I brought him up to his apartment in New Rochelle, in a small little one-bedroom apartment, and signed the balls. And that was the beginning of our, do you have any faith? Do you believe in God? And I never really thought about any of that. And, on the many car rides, because, listen, it's great to meet Mariano, know Mariano's a great person, but like everything else, once you've hung out with somebody a bunch of times, we're just two people that, pee in the same urinal and everything else. So, but everybody, the world's a classroom. Everybody has something to give. And I was soon about to be brought in, if you believe in divine intervention, into a relationship that taught me the importance of faith, how to give, the importance of giving back, and not expecting anything back. We're just giving because it's good to give. All these lessons we learn on these long car rides to go do appearances. And the thing I learned with Mariano is that faith is not something you can see. It's bigger than that. And it's something that's so critical. And it's what gives you the springboard on your foundation. You may have a foundation, but if you want a springboard, if you really want to get higher than you've ever been, there's nothing like having a springboard underneath your feet to push you up higher than you ever thought. Faith plays a big role in that. And it gives you a certain level of confidence and knowing what you're doing is good. I tell people all the time, it's like, the problem is not whether something's going to work out or not. You have faith, you want things to work out. The faith is what gives you the strength to know that whatever ends up happening is you're going to be okay. I'm not sitting here telling you that, don't worry, if you have faith, everything's going to work out. No. A lot of shit is going to happen that will not work out, and some things are actually bad. The thing I want to underline is that you'll be okay, regardless of how the situation turns out. And that's such an important part of faith, knowing that you're good, you're fine, you're doing all the right things, you're thinking about all the right things. And when things don't turn out right, there'll be a lesson learned, something that's going to help you grow, something that's going to make you better, which is most usually the point, right? The best things that have made you the best, that what you are, is the lessons and the hard knocks.
That's wonderful. And I really thank you so much for coming on the podcast and the live stream here today. Your book, your latest book,
yes,
is Living on Purpose. It's excellent. Please check it out. I'm going to put links to all your places, LinkedIn, your website, in the show notes. But for those listening right now who want to go right now and learn more about you, where's the best place online for them to go?
Well, starting off with free, you get this great free negotiating 101 entrepreneur right on BrandonSteiner.com. You get my blog for free and all the pods, and I don't monetize in any of this stuff. And if you go to Brandon Steiner, you can order the books. They're there also if you want. There's like specials. If you buy one, you get my other book. You got to have balls. So if you're interested in sports, you got to have balls. Shows how I built a company and really gets into the step-by-step process of how you can build a brand. I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I answer all my LinkedIn. I'm at max on my followers. on my connections, but you can follow me. I recommend. But you message me on LinkedIn, and I respond to just about everything. I usually spend an hour on LinkedIn a day. Love my relationships with LinkedIn, and that's how I met you, and I enjoy that. And I'm on Facebook pretty actively too. We do we have a live a studio in my office. We do a lot of live shows.
Yeah, watch that. That's great. Yeah.
Project decks and everything else.
Well, awesome. Well,
Cool.
thanks so much, Brandon. And thanks for sharing it. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you on LinkedIn. All right.
Have a great day. Keep in touch, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Brandon.